I was sitting alone on a microfiber couch in a secluded two-story timber cabin in rural Oregon at 1 in the morning when the wall-mounted smart home display suddenly flashed to life, displaying a high-definition live security feed of me sitting on the exact same couch, but from a camera angle position directly behind the dark glass of the locked basement door across the living room. My breath caught in my throat as cold sweat instantly pricked across my forehead, my heart hammering against my ribs while the torrential Pacific Northwest rain lashed violently against the floor-to-ceiling windows. I was house-sitting for my uncle for the weekend, completely isolated deep in the pine woods, and as far as I knew, there were no cameras installed inside the house, especially not behind the heavy oak door that led down into the unfinished crawl space. I stared at the 9-inch digital screen, watching myself on the live feed as I sat frozen in the ambient blue glow of the television screen. But then, right on the monitor, a tall, pale shape began to slowly materialize out of the black void behind my reflected shoulder on the screen, its long, skeletal fingers reaching through the shadows toward the camera lens. I snatched my smartphone off the coffee table with a trembling hand, dialing my girlfriend Chloe's number on speed dial, hoping against hope that she would answer her phone in Seattle. "Julian?" Chloe's voice came through the speaker, raspy with sleep. "Why are you calling me at 1 in the morning? Is everything okay out there?" "Chloe, someone is in the house," I whispered, my voice shaking so badly I could barely articulate the words. The wall tablet is streaming a video of me from inside the basement door, but the basement door is deadbolt. "Julian, calm down," Chloe urged, the sound of her Juve rustling over the phone line. "You're 30 miles away from the nearest town. It's probably just a glitch in the security software or a pre-recorded loop from your uncle's cloud drive." But as she spoke those words, the audio feed on the smart tablet suddenly burst into high-frequency feedback, and a wet, rasping laugh echoed out of the wall speaker, a sound that sounded like someone breathing through a throat filled with crushed glass. "Chloe, listen to me," I gasped, standing up from the couch so fast my knees buckled, keeping my eyes glued to the dark basement door 20 feet away. The figure on the screen just turned its head toward the camera. "It doesn't have a face, Chloe. It's just a blank slab of pale skin, and it's holding a metal key." Right on cue, a heavy, metallic click resonated through the quiet living room, the iron latch of the basement door sliding back into its housing with a loud snap. The heavy wooden door creaked open 2 inches on its rusted hinges, exposing a line of pitch-black darkness that smelled heavily of wet earth, copper, and rotting wood. I backed up toward the front entrance, my hand fumbling behind my back for the brass doorknob. But the moment my fingers touched the cold metal, the smart home system beeped twice, and every light in the cabin went completely black. Darkness engulfed me like a heavy blanket, plunging the room into absolute night, saved only by the rhythmic flashes of lightning outside the curtainless windows. In the sudden pitch blackness, the wall tablet remained lit, its screen glowing in the dark as it updated the security feed to show the entity stepping out of the basement doorway and into the living room, its body moving with a jerky, unnatural rhythm, its limbs bending at sickening angles as it glided across the hardwood floorboards toward the couch I had been sitting on 10 seconds ago. "Julian, are you there? Answer me," Chloe shouted through the phone speaker, her voice echoing in the small space. I squeezed my phone against my ear, clapping my left hand over my mouth to muffle the sound of my panicked, ragged breathing, backing flat against the entryway wall as the temperature in the cabin dropped so rapidly that my breath turned into thick white clouds in the gloom. A low, rhythmic clicking noise began emanating from the center of the living room, sounding like an antique typewriter being slammed against the stone floor. Then, my phone vibrated in my palm with an incoming call from an unknown number. I looked down at the glowing screen with wide, bloodshot eyes, and the caller ID displayed my own name and home phone number. I pressed ignore, but the phone immediately rang again, and this time, the audio automatically answered on speakerphone. "Julian," a voice whispered from the phone speaker, a voice that was an exact, identical match to my own voice, down to the subtle cadence and tone. "Why are you hiding behind a coat rack? I can hear your heart beating." A blinding flash of lightning illuminated the living room for a split second, and in that fleeting moment of light, I saw it standing 6 feet away from me. It was wearing my denim jacket and jeans, but its torso was stretched impossibly long, its neck tilted 90 degrees to the left as its hollow, featureless face stared directly into mine. I didn't think. I threw my entire weight against the front door, slamming the emergency latch down, and burst out into the freezing rain, tumbling down the wooden porch steps onto the mud-soaked driveway. I scrambled to my feet, sprinting toward my sedan, my sneakers slipping on the slick gravel as the inhuman, shrieking noise echoed from the open cabin door behind me. A sound like torn metal mixed with a dying animal scream. I threw myself into the driver's seat, jammed the key into the ignition, and stomped the accelerator, spinning the tires in the mud before roaring down the long, winding dirt driveway toward the main highway. I drove 40 miles without looking in the rearview mirror, tears of terror streaming down my face as the storm raged around the car, until I finally pulled into the parking lot of a well-lit 24-hour truck stop on Interstate 84. I sat in the idling vehicle, clutching the steering wheel with numb, trembling fingers, sobbing with relief as the warmth of the heater washed over my body, convincing myself that I had escaped whatever malevolent force had taken over that isolated house. But as I pulled out my phone to call the county sheriff's department, a new text message notification popped up on the lock screen from an unlisted number. I opened the message with a shaking thumb, my blood turning to ice as I read the text. "Thanks for leaving the car door unlocked when you got into the cabin. The trunk is really cozy." I froze as a cold. Wet hand slowly reached around the driver's side headrest behind my neck, its pale fingers wrapping firmly around my throat. I was lying in my bed in my family's renovated 1920s craftsman house in suburban Pennsylvania at 2 a.m, listening to the rain beat against the glass, when my phone vibrated with a text message from my sister Evelyn containing a photo of me sleeping in my bed, taken from a top-down angle directly through a gap in my ceiling drywall. Right as a heavy, wet thud echoed from the sealed attic space directly above my head. A jolt of electric terror shot down my spine as I scrambled backward against my headboard, my eyes wide as I stared up at the plaster ceiling fan that was swaying gently back and forth in the dark. I was completely home alone for the weekend while my parents were attending a conference in Philadelphia. And our home had no accessible staircase to the attic, just a sealed square access panel in the hallway ceiling that had been painted shut over 30 years ago. I grabbed my phone, my thumb shaking so violently I almost dropped it on the hardwood floor, and pressed the call button for Evelyn's number. She was away at college in Pittsburgh, 3 hours away, so there was no logical reason why she should have sent me that picture. The phone rang 3 times before she picked up, her voice sounding groggy and annoyed over the line. "Marcus, do you know what time it is? Why are you calling me?" "Evelyn, why did you just send me a picture of my bedroom?" I demanded, my voice hushed into a desperate, panicked whisper. "What are you talking about?" she muttered, the sound of her shifting in bed audible through the speaker. "I haven't texted you since 6 p.m. when I asked about the dog. I was fast asleep. Look at your text messages right now, Evelyn." I snapped, keeping my spotlight trained on the ceiling plaster above my bed. A long, agonizing pause followed on the line before Evelyn's voice came back, completely drained of sleepiness, now trembling with pure confusion. "Marcus, I didn't send that photo. The timestamp on my phone says it was sent from my account, but I don't even have that picture in my camera roll. Marcus, who took that picture from above your ceiling?" Before I could answer, a sickening, grinding sound echoed overhead, like dry bones scraping against plaster, and dark, oily droplets began seeping through the white ceiling paint directly above my bed, dripping down onto my duvet with soft, wet thuds. The liquid smelled abhorrent, a suffocating stench of copper, stagnant marsh water, and ozone that filled the bedroom in seconds. I threw off the covers, launching myself out of bed, grabbing my heavy aluminum flashlight and my pocket knife from the nightstand as my phone line began buzzing with severe electrical static. "Marcus, get out of the house!" Evelyn screamed through the speaker, her voice cutting through the harsh interference. I just checked the security app for the front door. The system says the front door has been wide open since midnight, but the perimeter alarm never went off. I lunged for my bedroom door, yanking the brass handle, but the door refused to budge. It was held firmly in place, as if someone were pulling it from the hallway side with immense strength. I rattled the knob, frantically, throwing my shoulder against the heavy wood, but it felt like trying to push against a solid slab of concrete. Above me, the ceiling drywall began groaning under immense weight, bulging downward in the center of the room as cracking sounds rippled across the plaster structure. A pale, multi-jointed hand with long, translucent fingers suddenly burst straight down through the ceiling drywall, sending sharp chunks of plaster showering onto my mattress below. The hand didn't belong to a human. Its flesh was grayish-white, stretch-marked, and missing fingernails entirely, its wrist bending in unnatural, fluid motions as it reached blindly through the hole, feeling the air for something to grab. I backed up into the corner of my room, my heart hammering against my chest so hard I thought my ribs would crack, raising the flashlight beam toward the hole in the ceiling. From inside the pitch-black void of the attic, two large, glossy black eyes peered down through the broken plaster. Eyes that reflected the flashlight beam like a predator in the woods at night. "Marcus!" A voice rasped from inside the ceiling. A voice that sounded like a distorted, overlapping echo of my sister Evelyn and my mother speaking at the exact same time. "Come up. The floorboards are so warm up here." The entity began pressing its weight downward, cracking through the drywall framing as its long, skeletal arms reached further down into my bedroom, its shoulders snapping into unnatural angles to squeeze through the narrow aperture. I didn't hesitate. I spun around, raised my heavy aluminum flashlight, and smashed it into the glass of my second-floor window, shattering the pane into hundreds of sharp shards that fell into the dark yard below. I scrambled onto the windowsill, ignoring the sharp glass cutting through my socks, and looked down at the icy grass 12 feet below. Behind me, the entity's torso dropped through the ruined ceiling with a heavy, bone-cracking thud onto my bed, its limbs snapping into place as it dropped onto all fours, turning its featureless, elongated head toward me with an inhuman, clicking screech. I leapt from the windowsill into the night air, falling 12 feet through the rain, slamming hard onto the wet lawn below. Pain shot through my right ankle, blinding and sharp, but adrenaline flooded my bloodstream, masking the injury as I scrambled to my feet and limped desperately toward my neighbor's house across the street. I pounded on their front door with my bare fists, screaming for help, until Mr. Henderson opened the door holding a porch light, looking at me in shock as I babbled hysterically about the thing in my ceiling. Two police cruisers arrived 5 minutes later, their red and blue lights flashing against the wet pavement as officers drew their sidearms and swept my family's house room by room. When they returned to the front porch 20 minutes later, the lead sergeant pulled me aside into the garage with a grim, shaken expression on his face. He told me that they found the attic access panel smashed open from the inside, and the space above my bedroom was hollowed out, lined with old clothes, bones, and hundreds of printed photographs of me sleeping in my bed over the last 6 months, all taken from narrow slits cut into the drywall ceiling. But the most terrifying part was what the officers found inside the locked electrical closet downstairs. My sister Evelyn's missing driver's license and cell phone, covered in the same dark, oily fluid, even though the real Evelyn was currently on her way from Pittsburgh with the state police. I was heating up leftover pizza in the kitchen of my 2-story suburban home in Boulder, Colorado at 2:30 in the morning during a sub-zero blizzard when the smart electronic deadbolt on my basement door disengaged with a loud, mechanical click, and before I could even take a step back, my security app popped up a motion notification showing a tall, featureless silhouette standing on my front porch holding my roommate Nolan's severed house keys. My blood ran completely cold as I stood motionless under the bright fluorescent kitchen lights, holding a paper plate in my hand while the bitter cold wind howled against the reinforced glass windows outside. My roommate Nolan had driven down to Denver for a winter snowboarding trip 3 days ago and wasn't supposed to return until Sunday evening, leaving me completely home alone in our house. The basement door, which was situated right next to the pantry in the kitchen hallway, slowly swung inward 3 inches on its hinges, exposing a crack of pitch-black air that smelled faintly of old iron, wet fur, and ice. I dropped the plate onto the counter, my heart hammering against my throat like a trapped bird, and grabbed a long kitchen knife from the wooden block on the counter. I pulled up my smartphone to check the live stream from the front door camera, but the screen flickered violently with green digital noise before displaying a chilling image. The figure on the porch was no longer outside. The camera feed showed the entity standing inside our front entryway, staring directly into the lens from 2 inches away, its face a smooth, pale mask without eyes, nose, or lips. "Nolan," I called out, my voice cracking with uncontrollable fear as I took 3 slow steps backward toward the back patio door. "If this is a prank, man, I swear to God I'm calling the cops." No human voice answered from the hallway. Instead, my phone vibrated in my hand with an incoming text message from Nolan's contact number. I looked down at the glowing screen, my hand shaking so violently I almost dropped the knife, and read the message. "Tristan, do not go into the garage. I left my truck in Denver, but someone just unlocked the front door using my spare key fob from 30 miles away." A heavy, rhythmic thumping noise began coming from inside the open basement stairwell. The sound of something heavy dragging itself up the wooden steps one by one, its claws clicking against the pine risers. The ambient temperature inside the kitchen plummeted so fast that my breath began forming dense, white clouds in the air, the frost rapidly creeping across the stainless steel appliances and the quartz countertops. "Tristan," a rasping, metallic voice echoed from the dark basement hallway. A voice that sounded like Nolan's tone, but pitched down into an unnatural, guttural tone that rattled the glass cabinet doors. "I brought the snow inside. Come help me unload the gear." I didn't wait to see what was coming up those stairs. I spun around and lunged for the sliding glass patio door that led to the backyard deck, pulling the aluminum handle with all my strength. But the smart home system beeped once, and the motorized lock mechanism engaged automatically, locking the sliding glass door in place as the digital panel displayed a message. "User Nolan has activated winter lockdown." Panic seized my lungs, suffocating my ability to breathe as I turned back toward the kitchen aisle, raising the kitchen knife in front of me with both hands. From around the corner of the pantry, a figure emerged into the bright kitchen light. It was wearing Nolan's heavy black winter parka and snow boots, but its body was unnaturally contorted. Its spine was bent backward at a 60-degree angle, its arms hanging down past its knees as its long, pale fingers scraped against the linoleum floor. The face beneath the hood was a pale, skinless oval that twitched in rapid, robotic microbursts. And as it moved toward me, it mimicked the sound of Nolan's footsteps, over-exaggerating the weight of each step until the floorboards groaned under the pressure. "Tristan, why are you holding a knife?" the entity rasped, its featureless face tilting toward me as a burst of freezing air blew out from its collar, smelling of decay and frozen earth. "We're going to be home alone all winter." I screamed in pure terror, raising my right foot and kicking the lower glass panel of the sliding door with all my weight, shattering the double-pane glass into a shower of dangerous shards that exploded out onto the snow-covered deck. I threw myself through the broken frame, ignoring the glass tearing through my jeans and jacket, and tumbled out into the knee-deep snowdrifts of the backyard in my socks. The sub-zero wind hit my face like a slap, but the extreme cold was nothing compared to the primal terror surging through my veins. I scrambled through the snow, rounding the side of the house toward the front driveway, sprinted across the ice-covered street, and threw myself against the front door of my neighbor's house, screaming for help at the top of my lungs. My neighbor, an off-duty paramedic named Dave, yanked the door open holding a flashlight and a heavy wrench, pulling me inside into the warmth as I babbled hysterically about the thing wearing Nolan's jacket in my kitchen. Dave immediately called 911, and 2 sheriff deputies arrived at the property 7 minutes later with their emergency lights flashing against the swirling snowstorm. The officers searched my house with drawn weapons, searching the main floor, the second-floor bedrooms, and the backyard deck, but found no sign of an intruder. However, When the lead deputy brought me back into the house to inspect the kitchen, he pointed his flashlight down into the basement stairwell with a grim, horrified expression. The entire basement was coated in a 2-inch layer of solid, crystallized ice, and sitting on the concrete floor at the bottom of the stairs was Nolan's snow parka, neatly folded, with his house keys sitting in the center of the hood. Completely dry, even though Nolan was still stuck at a highway rest stop in Denver 20 miles away, waiting out the blizzard.